Victory is ours, General Cale Varn sneered, his voice cutting through the commotion of his troops. Another human settlement reduced to rubble. Another victory in our endless conquest. The soldiers around him roared in approval, their metallic armor glinting in the dim light of the destroyed city. To the Varric, this was just another day in their unrelenting march across the galaxy, another world crushed under their superior might. Yet, as the dust settled over the ruins of Earth's colony, there was a strange, almost eerie stillness in the air. The soldiers, while confident in their victory, knew something was off, but they didn't care. They had no reason to fear a species that had only just begun to fight back. Is this really the best Earth can muster? Lieutenant Corsic chuckled, adjusting his helmet. He was tall and broad-shouldered, a veteran of many campaigns. His mocking tone was laced with arrogance, as if the very idea of humanity resisting their invasion was laughable. These primitive weapons are nothing compared to what we have. A few random shots won't save them. These humans are nothing more than insects, added Sergeant Carr, a lanky soldier with a cruel smile. He gestured to the wreckage around them, the smoldering remains of what was once a bustling human colony. And like all insects, they'll be squashed. The group continued their celebration. They spoke freely, unaware of the quiet figure watching them from the shadows, concealed beneath the broken concrete of a collapsed skyscraper. Captain Ryan Holt had been separated from his squad during the invasion. Alone in the ruins, he had witnessed the entire massacre unfold. But unlike these soldiers, Ryan had learned to be patient. The Varric were reckless, too focused on their victory to notice the hunter lying in wait. Ryan adjusted the scope of his rifle, his breath steady. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was about proving a point. Humanity wasn't a species to be underestimated. He had no intention of letting these invaders walk away unscathed. As the Varric soldiers reveled in their imagined victory, Ryan's thoughts turned to the faces of his fallen comrades. This city had been one of many Earth had lost, but it wouldn't be the last. Not if he had anything to say about it. Pathetic, Ryan muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible even to himself. He could see them clearly. Squad leaders, communication officers, grunts, all so sure of their superiority. His finger hovered over the trigger. They had all but declared the war over. They hadn't seen what he had seen. They didn't know what he knew. It was the perfect moment. Time for a reminder, Ryan whispered, his finger pressing gently against the trigger. The first shot rang out, a sharp crack that shattered the silence. Lieutenant Corsic dropped instantly, a clean hole between his eyes. He never saw it coming. The soldiers around him froze, their celebrations dying as their commanding officer collapsed without a sound. Ambush! Get down! General Varn's voice boomed, commanding but shaken. He had been watching with an eerie calm until the moment the first shot shattered their confidence. His eyes darted across the ruins, his senses heightened. Where is it coming from? Sergeant Carr shouted, his voice panicked, as he scanned the skyline through the glare of the setting sun. Ryan's second shot was already in flight. This time, it took out a communications officer who had foolishly moved away from the group, trying to call for reinforcements. His body crumpled to the ground with a lifeless thud. There was no warning, no sign of where the sniper was positioned. The Varric soldiers were scrambling, confused, their once unshakable confidence now a fragile thing, torn apart by unseen precision. "Form up!" General Varn barked, trying to regain control, his voice sharp with urgency. His soldiers, now fully aware of the threat, scattered, moving into defensive positions, but the sniper remained invisible. Ryan watched them like a predator observing its prey. They had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated him. They thought their armor, their numbers, their technology would keep them safe. But they were wrong. One by one, The soldiers fell into chaos. They began using their thermal scans, calling for air support, even firing blindly into the buildings surrounding them. But all their attempts were futile. Ryan had already melted into the shadows, a ghost in the ruins, leaving nothing but silence and the bodies of their own comrades as evidence of his presence. The Varric were like cornered animals now, desperate and disoriented. They had faced countless adversaries, but never like this. Humans, they had assumed, were nothing but weak, primitive creatures, barely able to fend for themselves. They were wrong. Humans had fought, bled, and survived, and they would continue to do so against all odds. General Varn clenched his fists in frustration. "He's toying with us," he growled. "Where is he? Why can't we find him?" The sense of invincibility that had once defined the Varric soldiers began to crack, their stoic exterior unraveling in the face of an enemy they could not see or understand. But Ryan knew their fear was growing, and that fear would make them sloppy. He was waiting for them to make a mistake, waiting for them to give him the opening he needed. One shot had already changed the battlefield. Ryan's mission was clear now, to show them that humans, no matter how small, how few, could never be dismissed as insignificant, that underestimating humanity had dire consequences. "Spread out. Find him." General Cale Varn barked, his voice sharp and commanding, but there was an edge of unease that hadn't been there before. His soldiers obeyed, fanning out across the ruins with their weapons drawn, scanning every shadow with thermal scopes. The once rowdy air of celebration was gone, replaced by a heavy silence broken only by the crunch of boots on debris and the distant echoes of collapsing structures. Ryan Holt lay motionless under a pile of rubble, his breathing steady, his rifle an extension of his body. He watched through his scope as the Varric soldiers moved in disjointed groups, their fear evident in every jerky movement. They were trying to appear composed, disciplined, but Ryan could see through it. He had spent years in war zones, and fear had a way of betraying even the best-trained soldiers. The alien invaders relied on their technology, their arrogance, their belief that they were untouchable. But none of that mattered here. Ryan had the advantage. The ruins of the city weren't just his battleground. They were his weapon. Through the scope, he picked out a pair of soldiers sweeping through the remnants of what had once been a marketplace. They moved cautiously, their weapons trained on every shadow. Ryan could hear their muffled communication through their helmets, distorted by the interference of the rubble and the lingering electromagnetic residue from the initial invasion. He waited, his finger poised on the trigger, his heartbeat steady. Timing was everything. His patience paid off when one of the soldiers gestured to his partner to move forward, leaving himself momentarily exposed. Ryan fired. The shot was precise, the crack of his rifle cutting through the silence like a whip. The soldier dropped instantly, his partner spinning around in confusion, frantically scanning the horizon for the source of the attack. By the time reinforcements arrived, Ryan had already relocated, slipping through the maze of debris like a ghost. Another one down. Varn's lieutenant growled, his voice carrying over the comms. "How is this possible? One human cannot do this." "He's using the terrain," Varn snapped back. "He knows this city. You don't. Move in tighter formations and use the drones." High above, small, insect-like drones buzz into life, their optics scanning for heat signatures. Ryan watched their movements carefully, staying low and using the rubble's thermal shielding to remain hidden. He had anticipated this. The Varric relied on their technology too much. They thought it would solve every problem, but technology was only as good as the operator. Ryan slid into the shadows of a collapsed building, his camouflage blending seamlessly with the debris. He activated a small EMP charge he had scavenged earlier. The pulse rippled outward, and several drones overhead faltered mid-flight, their systems shutting down before they crashed into the ruins. The invaders were furious. Ryan heard their shouts through his earpiece, which he had tuned to their communication frequency. Their frustration was palpable. He smiled grimly. Every mistake they made was another opportunity for him. The Varric regrouped near the central plaza, their numbers noticeably thinner. Varn himself had descended from his command post, his tall frame encased in ornate battle armor that shimmered faintly in the dim light. His presence was meant to inspire his soldiers, but Ryan could see the tension in Varn's movements. "Stay focused," Varn barked. "He's trying to divide us. Use your scanners. Anticipate his movements. He can't stay hidden forever." Ryan observed them from a distance, his mind calculating. He couldn't take them head-on, not yet. But he could keep them guessing, keep them on edge. He set a tripwire along a narrow alleyway, rigging it to a scavenged explosive charge. Then, moving swiftly, he found a vantage point and settled in, his scope trained on the plaza. Minutes later, a squad of Varric soldiers entered the alley. The explosion was deafening, the shockwave sending debris and bodies flying. The remaining soldiers scrambled for cover, their formations breaking down as panic took hold. Ryan took advantage of the chaos, picking off another soldier who had strayed too far from his group. Varn clenched his fists, his frustration boiling over. This was no longer a battle. It was a humiliation. A single human had reduced his elite force to a terrified, disorganized mess. "This ends now," Varn growled, activating his comms. "Bring in the heavy artillery. Level the area if you have to. I want him dead." Ryan watched as the Varric began unloading heavier weaponry, their desperation pushing them to escalate. They started firing indiscriminately into the ruins, reducing entire sections of the city to rubble. Ryan stayed one step ahead, moving through hidden tunnels and utilizing his intimate knowledge of the city's layout. But he knew this strategy wouldn't work forever. The more they destroyed, the fewer places he could hide. He had to make a decisive move. Ryan's earpiece crackled with intercepted chatter. "The general is moving toward the old cathedral," one soldier said. "He's setting up a command post there." "Perfect." Ryan made his way toward the cathedral, careful to avoid detection. The towering structure had once been a place of worship, its stained glass now shattered, its spires blackened by the fires of war. It was a fitting location for the next stage of the fight. Inside, Varn stood surrounded by his remaining officers, barking orders and trying to re-establish control. Ryan positioned himself in the shadows of a collapsed balcony, his rifle trained on the general. He had a clear shot, but he hesitated. Killing Varn now would scatter the remaining troops, but it wouldn't end the fight. Instead, Ryan decided to send a message. He shifted his aim and fired, his shot striking a communication console inches from Varn's head. The device exploded in a shower of sparks, and the general flinched, his calm veneer cracking for the first time. "Do you feel it now?" Ryan muttered under his breath, watching as the alien leader barked frantic orders, his composure unraveling. "That's fear. Welcome to the human experience." Ryan melted back into the shadows before the Varric could pinpoint his position. The cathedral erupted into chaos, soldiers scrambling to secure their leader and fortify the area. Ryan knew the game was far from over, but he had shifted the odds in his favor. As the night deepened, the Varric found themselves trapped in a deadly game they didn't know how to play. Ryan was no longer just a soldier. He was a phantom, a relentless reminder that their victory was anything but assured. "He's here. Find him." General Cale Varn's voice boomed through the cathedral, echoing off the shattered stone walls. His soldiers moved in frantic clusters, their once proud precision now reduced to a panicked scramble. Ryan Holt watched from his perch in the rafters, his body concealed by shadows. He could see their fear, smell their desperation. They were prey now, and they knew it. The general himself paced the floor below, his ornate armor reflecting the pale moonlight streaming through a broken window. Varn's confidence was cracking, his orders sharp but lacking conviction. Ryan knew this was his moment. The invaders had pushed him to the edge, and now he would push back. Ryan steadied his rifle, its scope trained on the soldiers below. Each movement was calculated, deliberate. He had no backup, no extraction plan. The only way out of this fight was through it. His finger rested on the trigger as he chose his first target, a soldier attempting to recalibrate a damaged drone. The shot rang out, clean and precise. The soldier crumpled to the ground, and the room erupted into chaos. Ryan wasted no time, shifting his aim and firing again. Another invader fell, then another. The soldiers returned fire, but their shots were wild, ricocheting off stone and metal. They had no idea where he was. "Hold your ground," Varn roared, his voice laced with fury. "He's only one man." Ryan smirked. That was their mistake, thinking of him as just one man. He moved like a wraith, disappearing into the cathedral's labyrinth of shadows. The building had become his battlefield, each corner a potential ambush, each broken pillar a shield. The invaders deployed more drones, their artificial eyes sweeping the area. Ryan anticipated their movements, using the cathedral's ruins to stay hidden. He set off another EMP charge, frying the drone circuits and plunging the room into an eerie silence. "You can't hide forever, human," Varn shouted, his voice a mixture of anger and frustration. Ryan's voice crackled over the Varric comms, his tone cold and calm. "Who said I was hiding?" The taunt had its intended effect. Varn's composure shattered, and he ordered his soldiers to press forward, tightening their formation around him. It was exactly what Ryan wanted. From his elevated position, Ryan set his sights on the general. He knew taking out Varn would demoralize the remaining soldiers, breaking their will to fight. But as he lined up the shot, his instincts warned him of movement behind. He spun just in time to see a Varric soldier climbing the beams, weapon raised. Ryan reacted instantly, firing his pistol in a quick, controlled burst. The alien fell, its weapon clattering to the ground, but the exchange had cost Ryan his position. "Up there! He's in the rafters!" a soldier yelled, and the rest opened fire. Bullets and plasma bolts tore through the wood, forcing Ryan to leap down, rolling as he hit the ground. He ducked behind a shattered altar, reloading his rifle as the soldiers closed in. This was it, the final stand. Ryan glanced around, assessing his dwindling options. The explosives he had planted earlier were his last card to play. As the soldiers advanced, Ryan activated the charges, triggering a controlled detonation. The explosion shook the cathedral, collapsing part of the ceiling and cutting off the soldiers' advance. Dust and debris filled the air, and the Varric hesitated, their ranks thinning. Through the chaos, Ryan emerged, his rifle trained on Varn. The general turned, his eyes meeting Ryan's. For a moment, there was silence, a standoff between predator and prey. "You've lost," Ryan said, his voice steady. Varn snarled, raising his weapon, but Ryan was faster. A single shot rang out, and the general staggered, falling to his knees. The remaining soldiers froze, their morale shattered. Ryan lowered his rifle, exhaustion washing over him. The invaders began retreating, their once imposing force reduced to a broken, scattered group. The battle was over, but Ryan knew the war was far from won. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the cathedral's ruins, Ryan stood alone amid the wreckage, his silhouette framed by the rising sun. He had survived. For now, that was enough.